When we talk about the presence of Islam in Kuwait, we're not just discussing a religion, we're exploring a deep and ancient connection that reaches back to the very beginnings of the Islamic era itself. The roots of Islam in Kuwait are intertwined with the broader expansion of Islam across the Arabian Peninsula, and understanding this journey reveals how Islam shaped not just the land, but also the identity of its people. Islam first reached what we now call Kuwait during the lifetime of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, in the 7th century. This area was part of the Eastern Arabian Peninsula, a land of powerful tribal connections and semi-nomadic lifestyles. And it wasn't long before the message of Islam began to echo across its sandy plains. One pivotal moment came after the Battle of Tat al-Salasil around the year 629. This battle, fought not far from the Kuwaiti region, marked the beginning of Islamic influence reaching deeper into the area. Tribes like Banu Tamim and others embraced Islam either during or shortly after the Prophet's lifetime, forming some of the earliest Muslim communities in the region. Following the Prophet's passing, the Islamic world entered a period of both expansion and consolidation. During the Caliphate of Abu Bakr, the Ridda Wars, or the Wars of Apostasy, swept through Arabia. Some tribes that had initially converted to Islam began to rebel, but were ultimately brought back into the fold of the Islamic community. Kuwait, or the land that would become Kuwait, was no exception. It remained firmly part of this early Islamic transformation. As we move into the time of the Rashidun and Umayyad caliphates, roughly the 7th to 8th centuries, the influence of Islam in the Kuwaiti region deepened. Back then, the area was known as Kadima. It wasn't just a desert outpost, it was a settlement, a stopover point for caravans and ships journeying between Iraq and the Indian Ocean. Islamic governance started to take root, the Arabic language became widespread, and Sharia law began shaping local life. Fast forward a few centuries to the Abbasid era, and you'll see that Kadima was thriving. Its location on the Gulf Coast made it a strategic and prosperous hub for trade and learning. Its connection to Baghdad, the heart of the Abbasid Caliphate, meant that Kadima wasn't isolated. It was influenced by the rich Islamic scholarship, commerce, and cultural development flowing through the Abbasid world. Even after the Abbasids declined, and as different regional powers, including Persians and tribal leaders, took turns influencing the area, Islam remained the unshakable foundation of daily life. Then, in the 16th century, the Ottomans entered the picture. Though they claimed the land, real authority belonged to the tribes on the ground. Among them were the Yutub, a group of families who migrated to the region in the early 1700s. And from within the Yutub emerged the Al-Sabah family, originally from Central Arabia. They settled in Kuwait around 1716, eventually establishing what we know today as the Emirate of Kuwait. The Al-Sabah were Sunni Muslims, and their leadership solidified Sunni Islam's position as the dominant religious identity in the country. That religious identity remained central throughout the 19th, 20th, and 21st century. Today, Sunni Islam is a majority faith in Kuwait, but there is also a significant Shia Muslim population, many of whom trace their roots to Persian Gulf migrations centuries ago. And while Islam deeply shapes Kuwaiti society, from its legal system to its education, the country also upholds a certain degree of religious tolerance. Christians and other religious minorities are allowed to practice their faiths freely, though proselytizing is not permitted. Throughout this entire history, from the time of the Prophet to the present, Islam has never been a mere religion in Kuwait. It has been a way of life, a foundation of law, a source of unity, and at times a cause for identity debates and political tension. But more than anything, Islam in Kuwait tells a story of resilience, adaptation, and deep cultural continuity. From the desert settlement of Kadima to the bustling modern capital of Kuwait City, the faith that once arrived on the back of trade caravans now pulses through every mosque call to prayer, every family gathering during Ramadan, and every lesson taught in Kuwaiti schools. And so, when we speak of Islam in Kuwait, we're not just recounting dates and events. We're telling the story of a nation and of a people whose spiritual roots run as deep as the Gulf itself. To truly understand Islam in Kuwait, you have to go beyond the history and the numbers and step into the everyday lives of the people. Because here, Islam is not just something you believe in, it's something you live. From dawn until nightfall, the daily rhythm of life in Kuwait is gently shaped by Islamic tradition, family values, and the pace of modern city life. The day begins before sunrise. That's when Muslims rise for Fajr, the first of the 5 daily prayers. Some pray at home, while others walk to their local mosque, often just a few steps away. Then, as the city wakes up, work and school routines take over. But no matter how busy the day gets, it always pauses at key moments. Duhr, the noon prayer, is often observed at workplaces or mosques nearby. By mid-afternoon, it's time for Asar. Then at sunset, Maghrib brings families together again, usually at home. And finally, before sleep, there's Isha, the last prayer of the day. Some pray it quietly at home, while others take the opportunity to reconnect at their local mosque. Friday, of course, is different. It's the most important day of the week. Muslim men across Kuwait attend Jumu'ah, the congregational prayer held at midday. The mosques fill with worshipers, and after the sermon and prayer, it's common for families to gather for a long, shared lunch. There's a sense of calm and reflection in the air. It's a spiritual pause in a fast-moving world. During Ramadan, that rhythm transforms completely. The days slow down, the streets quiet during the heat of the afternoon. Muslims fast from dawn until sunset, and when the call to Maghrib sounds, families break their fast together with dates, water, and a warm meal. After dinner, people return to the mosque for special night prayers called Taraweeh. Ramadan in Kuwait isn't just a religious season, it's a cultural event, a time of unity, generosity, and spiritual renewal. But religion in Kuwait isn't practiced in isolation. It's deeply embedded in the social fabric of the country. Family plays a central role in daily life. Large family gatherings are common, especially in the evenings. Hospitality isn't just a tradition, it's a responsibility. If you're invited into a Kuwaiti home, expect to be offered Arabic coffee, sweet dates, and enough food to feed an army. Religious holidays like Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha are moments of great joy, filled with prayer, feasting, and visits to relatives, neighbors, and friends. Now, in terms of where Muslims live in Kuwait, there's a general pattern. Sunni Muslims, who make up the majority, live throughout the country, in neighborhoods like Al-Asima, the capital region, as well as Hawali, Farwaniya, and Mubarak al-Kabir. You'll find Sunni mosques dotting nearly every street, with many serving as community anchors. Shia Muslims, who make up a significant portion of the population, are also spread across Kuwait, but have stronger concentrations in specific areas like Dasma, Salmiya, Bneid al-Kar, Jabriya, Rumaithia, Sulaybikat, Azahra, and Bneid al-Gar. In these neighborhoods, you'll find Husseyniyas, special Shia religious centers that come alive during observances like Ashura, when Shia communities reflect on the martyrdom of Imam Hussein. These gatherings are both the spiritual and communal, reinforcing shared identity and values. When it comes to work and school, life in Kuwait runs on a schedule that respects religious commitments. Most people start their workday between 7 and 8 in the morning and finish by 3 or 4 in the afternoon. Schools follow a similar pattern, and during Ramadan, official working hours are shortened to allow people to rest, worship, and spend time with family. Islamic education is also a key part of the national curriculum, and many children attend Quran classes in the afternoon or evening. And then there's leisure, because Kuwaitis, like anyone else, enjoy their downtime. Souks like Souk al-Mubarakia are full of life, with people shopping, socializing, and enjoying traditional foods. Modern malls are also a popular hangout, complete with prayer rooms, family sections, and cafes. Parks and beaches offer a cool retreat, especially after sunset, when the temperature drops and families come out for picnics and evening walks. In public spaces across the country, whether in airports, malls, or government buildings, you'll find designated prayer rooms. It's a reminder that faith isn't confined to mosques. It travels with the people, shaping their choices, their routines, their relationships. So what does daily life for a Muslim in Kuwait really look like? It's a delicate balance, a blend of devotion, tradition, work, and modern living. Whether Sunni or Shia, whether in a government office, a family kitchen, or a bustling souk, Muslims in Kuwait live their faith not just through words or rituals, but through the quiet, consistent rhythm of everyday life. While Kuwait is often praised for its religious tolerance compared to other countries in the region, the reality for Muslims living in Kuwait, whether Sunni or Shia, is not without its complexities. Yes, most enjoy a relatively high standard of living, and yes, Islam plays a central role in public life. But beneath the surface, there are significant social, political, and legal challenges that shape the experiences of many within the Muslim population. One of the most persistent issues revolves around sectarian tension, specifically the dynamic between Sunni and Shia Muslims. Sunnis make up the majority and are more widely represented in government and public life. Shia Muslims, who account for roughly 30 to 40% of Kuwaiti citizens, have often voiced concerns about underrepresentation, especially in sensitive areas like the defense and security ministries. While some Shia figures hold seats in parliament, top-tier cabinet positions are rarely granted to them. This lack of proportional political presence contributes to a sense of marginalization, particularly among younger generations. It's not just politics. There's also a matter of trust, or, in some cases, suspicion. Shia mosques and religious centers, known as Husseiniyyahs, are often more closely monitored by authorities, especially during significant events like Ashura. This heightened surveillance is typically justified by concerns over foreign influence, particularly from Iran. Unfortunately, that suspicion has translated into employment bias as well, especially in the military, intelligence, and police sectors, where some Shia Kuwaitis find their career paths limited, not by merit, but by sectarian assumptions. Religious freedom, while generally upheld, also comes with restrictions. Both Sunni and Shia preachers must receive official approval to speak in public, and sermons, particularly those that touch on politics or sectarian issues, are often monitored or censored. There are laws against blasphemy that can lead to imprisonment, even when the person involved is Muslim, simply for expressing views that differ from dominant interpretations. This creates a cautious environment where open religious dialogue is discouraged and diversity within Islamic thought is quietly suppressed. But perhaps one of the most pressing and heartbreaking issues is that of the Bidun, Kuwait's stateless population. Many of them are Muslims who have lived in Kuwait for generations, but without recognized citizenship, they exist in a kind of legal limbo. This means limited access to government jobs, higher education, healthcare, and even participation in religious or civil life. Some Bidun Muslims report being excluded from mosque leadership roles or denied opportunities to pursue religious education. Their faith is not in question, but their identity, in the eyes of the state, remains undefined. In the workplace, too, subtle forms of discrimination persist. Shia professionals in particular have reported hitting glass ceilings in state-run institutions. Promotions are slower. Appointments to influential roles are more difficult to attain. In the private sector, tribal affiliations and religious background can influence hiring decisions, even when qualifications are equal. Media and religious expression also remain tightly controlled. While Kuwait allows for more religious programming than some of its neighbors, Shia religious content receives far less airtime on national channels. Online forums and platforms are monitored, and posts considered politically or religiously sensitive, especially those that critique the ruling structure or touch on sectarian grievances, can be quickly removed and users penalized. All of this takes place within a broader regional context. The geopolitical rivalry between Iran and Saudi Arabia has created a backdrop of tension that influences domestic Sunni-Shia relations in Kuwait. Authorities are cautious, sometimes overly so, about the potential for foreign interference, particularly from Iran. There have been cases in recent years where Shia individuals were arrested on suspicion of links to Iran or Hezbollah. Whether or not these claims are valid, the effect is clear. An atmosphere of mistrust that complicates community relations and reinforces a sense of us versus them. And yet, despite these challenges, there is also hope and movement toward unity. Intersect marriages are not uncommon in Kuwait. Business partnerships between Sunni and Shia families are widespread. At key moments, especially during times of regional instability, the Kuwaiti leadership, including the emir, has called for sectarian harmony and reminded the nation that unity is strength. These calls for togetherness, though sometimes symbolic, matter deeply in a society where the balance between tradition and progress is always being negotiated. So yes, Muslims in Kuwait enjoy religious rights that many in the region still fight for, but those rights exist within a structure that is sometimes uneven, shaped by history, politics, and the tides of regional power. Understanding Islam in Kuwait means acknowledging not just the faith of its people, but the challenges they face in practicing it freely, equally, and without fear. If you found this deep dive into Islam in Kuwait insightful, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more informative content like this. Share your thoughts in the comments, whether it's about Kuwait's religious history, modern Muslim life, or the challenges communities face today. And if you think someone else would benefit from this perspective, make sure to share the video. Your support helps us continue exploring stories that matter.